Hello and welcome to Talking Dogs on a Monday. I'm back. I'm back. We had BC in the chair last week, but I'm back and we're missing. Robert Caddison was due to join us this morning, but sadly can't make the assignment. And instead, it's just myself and the Exile Dub. We are going to be shooting the breeze for the next half an hour, maybe a bit more. Tommy Lyons, a great weekend of Greyhound sport, indeed a great week of Greyhound sport. We had the Dundalk International last Wednesday. Of course, Saturday night saw the Corn Cuchulainn coming to a dramatic conclusion at Shelbourne Park. Of course, we also had the Shelley Fennelly Memorial at Cork, the Tipperary Cup at Thurles, the Greyhound Derby at Limerick, and we also had the opening round of the Barwon Racing Irish Sprint Cup from Dundalk on Saturday night. So lots to talk about. I thought we start somewhere. Let's start with the Corn Cuchulainn and the action at Shelbourne Park on Saturday night. It was a classic, and it is a classic, and it had a tremendous winner, Kinturk Road, blitzing out, winning in 41.66 on a track that was certainly a lot slower than it had been 7 days earlier.
Yeah, like that was the obvious conclusion to come to when the clock came up after Kinturk Road won. Um, but I suppose at the same time that was her seventh run over 750, and for relatively likely race bitch, and it can take its toll, and on the other greyhounds too. Like, so it's not. I actually thought, maybe it's because I wanted her to win, and I found it watching it. I wasn't as impressed as I was when I watched the replay. It was a funny
Yeah.
one. And I think her semi final was probably something similar. She like in the semi final, Hackett Carlow kind of challenged and really put it up to her, and you could argue was probably a little bit unlucky, and she only won by length. Now she won the final by 5 lengths, but Hanover Phantom, who actually Barry Cobb was quite keen on last week at a big price, thinking if it broke at all, it could run a big race. Hanover Phantom ran, but once, and I suppose I didn't realize it because I was kind of thinking back to the semi final while I was watching the final on Saturday night, and thinking, oh, this isn't over, this isn't over, this isn't over until she hit the line. Whereas actually, when I watched the replay, once Hanover Phantom kind of checked off at the third bend, yeah, the third bend, um, it was all over. She was probably 4 or 5 clear down the back in Turk Road, and she kind of maintained that all the way home. So, like, she's a terrific bitch, and like the 41.66 means nothing to me because I think the 41.02 is a fair reflection. What she did last week is one of the fastest times ever at Shelbourne Park for the 750. So, I think that's more in keeping with it. I thought she would win it for the reason that she had that bit of early pace. And it was key again because had Hanover Phantom broken a bit better, maybe he would have got up inside the third bend and you could have had a different race. Um, but yeah, Garfini Blaze missed it and got a little bit of trouble. Ballymac Katie, a kennel companion of the winner, was showing phenomenal
She was
pace.
charging into the fifth bend.
She was showing phenomenal pace into the third bend. No, she probably still had about 8 lengths to make up on the leader at that stage, and it was probably too. I'm sure it was too much because she would have had to go by Hanover Phantom too. But like, she was showing terrific pace. But the winner knows how to do it, and can do it in fast and slow times in the sense of if it's a bit of a slog, she can do it. If it's a fast track, she can do it. I think she's just seems to have blossomed since she stepped up to six bends for Liam Dowling. I think she's a smashing bitch.
Yeah, absolutely. She's obviously homebred, Ballymac Cashew out of Ballymac Arminta. Ballymac Arminta is the fastest bitch ever to cover 5.25 yards at Shelbourne Park. I think she's close enough to that as regards the 550 as well. Of course, she was a champion
Mm.
stakes winner herself, Ballymac Arminta, a very special lady. And this Kinturk Road, she's very talented. You said it, last week and this week. She had to, like, she really had to dig out, dig in up front. Hackett Carlo was on her tail last week from the start. This week it was Hanover Phantom. Lovely seam off the second bend to move second. Both of them are blessed with huge four bend speed. And for her to contain both of them to the third or fourth bend is testament to the pace that she has herself. Like, this isn't just purely a staying performance. She has real good four bend pace, as well as stamina. I was very taken by her the other night, as you said, Tommy. She could hand over Phantom off at the third bend. Now he wasn't in a position to get up the inside anyway. He was still that
Yeah.
length behind. But when she
Mm.
closed the door there, she sort of made up her mind. She made up his mind for him. He had only one option to go. He checks off. All of a sudden, finds himself three back. By halfway, it's 4.5. And as you said, she just keeps galloping to the line to win by 5 lengths. Garfini Blaze completely out of luck. He got checked up at the first bend. Didn't get the cleanest of passages at the fifth bend. He runs well actually to finish third. Ballymac Katie is the one we all sort of spotted into the third bend or the fifth bend. they're a remarkable litter. Like, there's three of them in the litter. They finished third, fourth, and fifth. Yes, it didn't happen for them on the night, but there's no question they're mighty, mighty strong. Hackett Carlow, he needed to take a flyer, as did Newport Pier. Newport Pier turned close, but failed to hold Hanover Phantom off the second bend. It was forced to check them at the fifth bend when things got a bit tight. But it was all about the winner, Kinturk Road, owned by Frank Thornton, who was a great pal of Liam Dowling's. My great memory of Frank Thornton is when I was sort of 13, 14 years of age, and there was a Friends of Lixnaw supporters night down at Tralee, and my father said to me, "Do you want to come?" And as we were driving out the driveway on the way to Tralee from Dublin, he said, "Now, whatever happens tonight," he says, "you keep it quiet. You don't tell your mother." Well, we ended up in the local presbytery at 3 in the morning. There's me sitting there drinking whatever Coke or TK Red Lemonade or something, and they'd had a night where it was basically all about things Lixnaw, and Frank Thornton was like the sort of the man of the hour, the man of honor that night. And honest to God, if you had told me that Frank Thornton was 100 years of age, I would have believed you, because he seemed so old back then. That's 30 years ago, and he's still a fresh man. He spoke very, very well in his interview with RPGTV the other evening, and it's great to see a pure doggy man like that, who's been involved in the sport, involved in the track for so long, getting a big night in Shelbourne Park in a classic. And I'm sure that meant an awful lot to Liam Dowling as well as it did to Frank, because Liam is used to owning all these dogs himself, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind owning it himself. But the fact that it's owned by his great pal Frank Thornton would mean a lot. It was also pointed out to me by Shane Dowling the other night. I never spotted it, never copped it, that this was the bonus part of the bonus series, and that Kinturk Road, when landing the Deadly Kennels Open 750, left herself open for a €10,000 bonus, that if she went on to win the Corn Cuchulainn, an extra 10 grand. It was a good night for owner, breeder, trainer.
Geez, I didn't realize that, because you got 10.5 for winning that. You got 5 for winning the Deadly Kennels, another 10. Didn't realize it was a bonus. Gee, that's huge.
It's a good bonus as well, because it's 40% to owner, 40% trainer, and then 20% to the breeder. Now, as it happens, Liam Dowling is 60% of that 100%, but
still,
it's still good money.
It's still the right way. It's still the right way to do it, and to break it up like that. But the race, as I was saying to you, the race is a very good example of the importance of studying your racing properly. In one sense, like, I think there's nothing more important than seeing a race live, because you've already made up your mind of what you think is going to happen, and then something can hit you if you don't know the result, right? So you're seeing it live, or if you don't know the result, you're just watching for the first time and you haven't got the result in front of you. um you see something will surprise you. Something will jump out and say, "Geez, I didn't expect that," or whatever. But then you, like, and to me, Kinturk Road, I had a preconceived idea of what might happen, considering what I'd seen in the semi-final. But then watching it again, watching the replay, it was much more impressive. And you actually broke it down very well there, saying that Hanover Phantom's a dog with 550 speed, proper 550 speed, that might, kind of give it trouble. And we do know now that is the way to get Kinturk Road beaten over over 6 bends, is if there's a real specialist, a pure top drawer 550 dog that can get up inside her early, maybe kind of cause her trouble. Then it might be worth seeing what she's capable of doing, capable of not doing, whatever. But the problem with that, of course, is if you have that type of dog that has that sort of 550 speed, it's unlikely they're going to stay 750. So I don't know if we'll ever find one that will do that. But you need a proper specialist early pace to get in front of her, and she has one from off the pace as well. We saw that below in Cork. So it's not like there's only one string to her bow. She has more than one. She's classy. I didn't realize that about the bonus. I was actually wrote in my report this morning in the Examiner that it was a lovely, it was a profitable summer with just the 10.5 and the 5. Just didn't realize there's another 10 on top of that. That's good.
Yeah. It's a nice chunk of change, and that's 7 on a bounce for her. That's 7 starts over 750 yards, 7 victories. Just so happens that they are her 7 successes. She was struggling to win a race over 4 bends. I think that will change. We've seen that in recent years, that it gives them great confidence. Now, whether she will have the early speed against the very, very best, but she'll certainly pick up 4 bend races, and in top company. Don't get me wrong; it's not that
she
she'll
goes
pick up
to
an easy
Derby.
one. I don't know. She I'm sure Liam will have plenty for it. So I wouldn't say he'd be too concerned about adding to his team, which we will get to. We should actually call tonight, instead of talking dogs on a Monday, just talking Liam Dowling on a Monday, because he had an unbelievable weekend, which we will get to. But no, a wonderful success for Frank Thornton, Liam Dowling, and Kinturk Road. And we look forward to seeing where she ends up next. If she does run in the early rounds of Derby, well, best of luck to her. But I would imagine it's pretty much mapped out for her. I'll imagine we'd see her in the Open 750 on Derby final night, and you would have to suggest that Winter Racing Festival towards the back end of the year, it would be, the prime target now at this stage. Ballymac Katie, just don't be surprised if she turns up in the UK at some point. Perhaps still in the ownership of Liam Dowling. He's won the TV trophy in the past with Ballymac Bonnie. I'm sure he'd like to win it again. And I think listen, I don't think we're going to get a big price about when she steps up to 8 bends eventually, be it in this side of the world or across the pond. Moving on, some cracking racing on the card, Tommy. I want to mention one or two other races. Certainly want to mention the previous race to the Corn Cuchulainn, the 6th race in the card. This was the race for the June 21 whelps and younger, and it had the likes of Jatara, so impressive down at Curraheen, Boyle Sports Bob, it looks a potential star, Deadly Style, New Win Port, Droopy's Bro, each and every one of them very, very fast, a really select group, and yes, the laddie da left them standing. I couldn't help but be reminded of the first night I ever saw Ballymac Matt running over 550 yards at Shelbourne Park. He came up 2 or 3 months before the Derby. He did a 29:36 run, and it was just the most telling, brilliant display, and it was very much reminiscent of what the laddie dad did the other night. He left good greyhounds standing, Tommy. I thought this was so impressive. Ballymac Cashout is a new sire. Kinturk Road is his flag bearer at the moment, although he's producing a few fast ones. Well, Lenson Bocco is clearly one to keep an eye on too, because the laddie da looks to have everything. That was just a 6th career start the other night. He did 29:44 on a track that I was certainly rating more than 20 slow, I must say. Look, I can't tell you how impressed I was, to a point where I got home that night and went searching through the market to see if I could find the laddie da for the Derby. No sign of him, I'm afraid. Not enough racing on his card, but have no fear. This is a greyhound that we will be hearing an awful lot more of.
Yeah, but like he won his first 2 rounds below, and it wasn't in Tralee, wasn't it? It was in Tralee, yeah. He got a bit unlucky, got into all sorts of trouble in the 3rd round. Actually, Ballymac Marino won the heat. But what I loved about the other night was it was he was as straight as a gun barrel to the first bend. I mean, absolutely flew out of trap one, never deviated a centimetre left or right. Ran up to the first bend, raced the first 2 bends lovely. Went wide, coursing the hair, of course, in down the back, very wide down the back. Tightened up again around the last 2 bends, came middle in the early in the straight. And now he did go back towards the rails in the maybe in the last 50, 60 yards. He kind of went, he headed back towards the rails. But there was a great, the most important part of the race to keep your line and keeping it is early. And he did it as professionally as he could possibly do it. I was like you, Ian. I was kind of blown away with it. I thought we had enough greyhounds that could potentially win a derby. We just added another one on Saturday night.
Tommy, he as far as I'm concerned, he leaped over
Okay.
95% of dogs in the Derby market. I would have him right bang up there towards the head of the market. Obviously, inexperience and youth is a one slight concern, but he's just a lovely 77-pound, well balanced greyhound. Has good early speed. He's big down the back. His dam ran up the what was formerly the Barry's T down at Curraheen, so the stamina on the dam side, and he certainly wasn't stopping to the line over 550 yards. He's in October 21. I just happened to be texting Shane Dowling on the night about another matter or two, and I just said, by the way, the laddie da. He said, we've always thought a lot of him. He said, that's the first time we've really seen that early speed, but just don't be surprised if you see it plenty more again. Honestly, I can't tell you how impressed I was. I'll put that up there as one of the most impressive performances I've seen all year from a greyhound. Just really taking, and I look forward to what we'll see from him later. We might discuss the Derby later on, just if we have a couple of minutes to spare. Elsewhere on the card, so some fine displays, no question about it. But those for me were the big two. Towards the end of the card, we saw Clona Rocco winning a 4th in a row, beating the top, good field likes Crypto Punk, and Droopy's got it in behind. He's just a dog that's really riding crest of a wave. Tommy Hewick, a good winner of the last race, the wonderfully named Syndicate, the horse that bought the dog Syndicate, owning Tommy Hewick, and I think we know who's involved in that. Anna Bailey lowered the colours of Clonbrine Treaty, Tommy. Clonbrine, he's just going to have to sharpen up at those boxes. It's just getting a little concerning at this stage.
Well, yes and no. I was in Curraheen on Saturday night, and I actually missed that race. Must have been talking whatever. I missed the race, and somebody said to me, "Oh, Clonbrine Treaty got beaten," and I was kind of going, "All right." Okay, so we haven't quite solved the problem with Clonbrine Treaty, yet, or haven't figured out where we stand. But actually, when I watched the race afterwards, I wasn't as disappointed as I thought it'd be. I actually thought he tried his heart out. He missed it, showed lovely pace. Anna Bailey's a fair tool. Was Derby semi-finalist last
Oh,
year?
he,
No.
he can run now. And and the one thing about Anna Bailey is he doesn't often get on the bunny in that sort of company. But when he does, like this dog would say 600 yards. Like there was no like this was one where you could hear the crowd and all that. But off the second bend, like there's never going to be a case of picking up Anna Bailey. Like there's not a dog in training that'd probably pick him up at that point.
No, there isn't, and I actually thought that's what I liked about it. I actually felt no, okay, he did when he got to the last bend, Clonbrine Treaty kind of veered off a little bit, lost a bit of ground. Milridge Bryce was picking him up, to some degree, although Clonbrine Treaty was still trying hard to the line. So, like, you would be concerned if he was going to be in the habit of missing the kick. But I thought I'd be very disappointed, having known the result beforehand. I wasn't as disappointed because I had no notion of how the race had gone. I wasn't as disappointed as I thought it'd be. Um, yes, you'll have concerns in case you're going to miss the kick, but you know what'll happen? There'll probably be a couple of, relatively, for his standard, there'll probably be a couple of relatively easy rounds of the Derby, which can give him time to settle in, and maybe, and like, I'd imagine Graham hasn't done the full work on the dog yet in
No,
terms of
of course,
getting him
no, I
fully.
wouldn't.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, it's the type of dog Graham excels with. The dog that can absolutely fly the traps and dominate, and it's the type of dog he excels with. And I think that he can get him right. I think he can get him right in time. So he's still definitely a player, definitely. And I
Uh,
thought actually, sorry, one of the dogs got beaten in the race you talk about with Clonard Rocco. Druby's got it. Thought he ran well. Obviously, there's been massive hold-ups in his career, but he's immensely talented. He's another dog, even though he's beaten 7.5 lengths in 28-41. Um, I thought I liked his attitude. I felt that he for a dog we knew would fade if he didn't lead. Felt he gave an awful lot, and he's probably got one more run now next week up to sharpen him up, I suppose, to give him a chance. Obviously,
as
five
you
fifties.
said, he has big holes in his card. He was a notable drifter
Yeah,
the other night, which would suggest that
yeah,
connections felt he was badly in need of the run still. He can only improve further. Let's just hope he is back in the track and that there's not another gap in his card or anything
yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Another one dog I want to mention. This Dennis Linehan Solicitors Open on Race Tommy could potentially like I have no doubt that this is as good a renewal as we've ever seen of the unraced stake down at Curraheen Park. And Dale Road Duke, who
Yeah.
ran well through the competition, but was never the talking dog in the competition. Like he was a 7-2 chance in the final, so he was still very well respected. I thought his run the other night at Shelbourne on Shelbourne debut was most taking. Obviously, a very, very messy race. I don't know if you saw it live, Tommy. You wouldn't have been able to see the replay. He forced his way up the inside on the opening corner, charged his way through, showed lovely early speed. There was awful traffic on his outside. He missed it, skipped on. But as I said at the time, I thought the track was well back. And then he posted 29.64, and I was going, well, I don't know how to rate that. It was clear afterwards. He won 9.5 lengths in 29.64. I think Thomas O'Keefe is a really nice dog here, Dale Road Duke, and he is relatively young and he's going to improve. He's a September 21, so they could go down the juvenile derby route, but just the way he ran
Yeah.
the other night, I think the 550 is going to be the key to him. I think he needs the longer run to the opening corner. I'd have no problem in throwing him in. Take a chance. This dog could be anything. A son of good news out of Burgess Sarah, so certainly bred to be fast. Um, yeah, just a really, really taking display. Probably a dog that caught you right down at Cork.
Yeah, he definitely is, and it was a brilliant stake, the Dennis Linehan solicitors. Like Drew's Flightline, there was a huge talk about Drew's Flightline before that competition. Obviously, had done the trials, did it in the final. I thought Johnny Linehan's bitch who finished second in that stake, ran an absolutely remarkable race. Droopy Zelda in the final that night too. So, and Dale Road Duke was only adding to it. I actually like even the dog that finished fifth, Orchid Legacy. I don't think he went right for it in the last two rounds. I caught my eye earlier on the first and second rounds. I thought it was
I, I
looked a
spoke I,
proper.
I spoke to a couple of men about that dog the week before the final. He was the dog you're sort of going, yeah. I think this the dog there's more room for improvement from. As it is, I'd say they're all just a special, special bunch, no question about it.
It's funny. It's funny. I spoke to a trainer about that dog too. Actually, to that might be
Yeah.
one to have a look at.
But I don't think they're getting them cheap. Right, we'll move on from Shelbourne Park. We'll be back to Shelbourne, I'm sure. Dundalk on Wednesday night, Tommy.
Yeah.
Obviously, Time Greyhound Nutrition have stepped up considerably in recent times. They're a new enough company. Obviously, some well-known faces behind it. Willie and John and involved with Time Greyhound Nutrition. It's great to see them sponsoring so much. They sponsored the Dundalk International, one of the great and most storied races on the calendars. They also sponsored the Graders Derby at Limerick on Saturday night. And must give that a mention. Won by Headley Susie, the Tralee qualifier in 28-93. I thought in the great tradition of Irish graders, it would be better if the Graders Derby was won in 28-10. But no, it's 28-93. Perfectly respectable time. No shenanigans going on. Congratulations to Nick Cotter with Headley Susie. Again, 6 tracks involved in this. It's a good scheme. You know, this is the sort of the types of scheme that sort of spreads it around, and it's good to see a good winner like Headley Susie coming out on top. And not one of the huge names in greyhound racing coming to the fore. Headley Susie, as I said, claiming that €5,000 prize. But let's get back to Dundalk and to the International. It was a vintage renewal, no question about it, and it was certainly a race that will live long in the memory, Tommy, because it went right to the wire. I was on the stands. I thought Rahamofo had won by a neck. As it was, I didn't realise there was all sorts of controversy going on about it on Twitter. Oh, that's a disgrace. You know, Ballabula heads up. Not from where I was standing. There was nobody on track giving out the result. I can promise you that. Rahamofo eventually coming through to land the spoils from Balnabola Ed. It was great to see Brookside Ritchie running so well. In a strange contest, Cochise went up fast and he sort of not ruined the race, but sort of made it the race it was. He edged off the corner. He badly hampered Bobsleigh Dream, who at the time was in a lovely position. Cochise himself was in a lovely position. Brookside Ritchie skipped around, showed great speed to get to the front. Balnabola Ed took a bump off the second as he was just trying to get loose, probably cost him a length. He might have been challenging at a different point. As it was, he's held up when he's trying to challenge, swings wide. At that point, Rahamofo, who hasn't lost the stride, having been left third in the opening corner, is absolutely motoring. She's looking more and more like a 600-yard bitch as she goes on. But for her to win the way she did, coming from lengths behind the dog she did, it was just a special race and a special finish.
It was a brilliant race. I was in Youghal Wednesday night watching it on my phone, and I hadn't a clue how it won. I thought that Rahamoffa might have just lunged at the line because I thought for a second that Ballaball was doing enough, and then you see it. You think as you're watching, he comes to the line, thinking, he's just doing enough, and next thing she kind of lunged. So we were waiting a while actually to find to get the result. A lot of things about the race were interesting. I mean, if you told me that Rahamofo would break in front of Balnabola 8, I'd say, nah, no, that won't happen. He showed terrific pace up. I actually thought watching live, and of course you're watching on a tiny screen, that he got more interference at the second bend than maybe he did. Maybe he did. I thought he might have lost 4 or 5 lengths. He lost a couple probably.
Yeah.
Just by the knock-on effect from Cochise going out on top of Bobsleigh Dream. But he did lose momentum now as well. I thought he showed phenomenal pace. Do you know the funny thing is, Rahamova tracked him around and tracked beautifully. Now she seems to be a bitch that when you're swapping tracks, they all come alike to her. She's able to I know she had started off in Galway or whatever and she was back there and she was unbelievable when she went back last year. But remember the night in Tralee, that final and the ground she made up in the final where she had no right there when she was ducking and diving between greyhounds, and to get beaten as little as she did behind Ballinabola Ed in the race of champions. That was a phenomenal performance. I thought like she would need something to happen in the race to give her a chance of beating him last Wednesday night. And it probably did happen. He missed it completely and got a little bit of crowding. But you know what? There are a few greyhounds in training who would be able to pick him up, even allowing for what little advantage she got, because it wasn't huge. I thought live it was he lost 4 or 5 lengths, 6 lengths coming out the second bend. He didn't. He ran a phenomenally good race again, and anybody who fancies him for the Derby won't be put off in any way whatsoever about that performance. But she is a special bitch when she's on that sort of form. She has gone through periods of her career where she's lulled. And there were times when you and I seemed to think that she was gone, or maybe that was the end of her. No, we've seen the best of her. She won a nose. What a great bitch she was. Move on. But actually, she's like Mert has done some job at her bringing her back to be as good as she has been this year. It was a brilliant race, and I'm glad it was. Ian, sorry, I'm glad it was a brilliant race because when you put up huge money for a one-off race, there's a lot in store. If something pops out and wins by 8 lengths, you're kind of going, geez, you're giving him 20 grand soft. That was just a stunning race. I'm glad it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, the winner had to win it. You know what I mean? And she
Yeah,
had to go out and win the race. And
she had to
as you
earn
say,
it. Yeah,
20,000 euro. When you put up that sort of change, you want people to be talking about the race afterwards, and by God, they will be. We'll still be
yeah,
talking about when we're doing our Christmas or our end of year wrap. We'll be
yeah,
talking about one of the great races of the year was the
yeah.
Dundalk International, and it is a race that will be referenced plenty over the coming months, which is what you want as a sponsor, as those from the track, and of course those involved, especially the likes of Marissa and Stephen who own Rahamofo, and of course Mert Lahey in the Village Kennels. I fear just the way they were talking the other night that she's due in season, and that'll be that. You know what I mean? We won't see her again. She'll be bred because whatever about a Derby challenge, and she could certainly we know how fast she is. She could certainly go deep in a Derby. Just love to see her once over 600 yards. I really would. I just
Yeah.
think she'd be a stunner over it because she does have enough early speed to challenge over challenge to the corner against that type of greyhound. You know, like in ties gone by, I might have been even tempted to try over 750, but I think that flag is flown. No question, she's a very, very
Well,
fast lady. Big run by
she's
Ballymole Ed and a big run by Brookside Ritchie. It was great to see the two UK challengers coming up. Jimmy Fennick was buoyant afterwards. I met him coming out of the restaurant, and he was like, yes, he had led 4 lengths. He was beaten, but he was just delighted. He was delighted with the dog. He was delighted they came over. They had a great experience. And he sort of said, bar one's going to start too soon. He was talking about the sprint, and he said, but it could be over for the Derby, and that's great to hear. That's what we want. We want 1 or 2 English challengers. Bring them over. And Brookside Ritchie is a dog with, you saw the early speed he showed, sort of his partner was beside him, and she said, is the back straight in Shelbourne like this? I said, no, no, no. Dundalk is one of his own. I said, he like over 550 yards in Shelbourne Park where he was a halfway, he'd have won. You know what I mean? Because it's much more of a speed test than that 550 in Dundalk. He's not a dog I'd rule out completely in Shelbourne Park.
wasn't the betting kind of funny? Do you think that in it was very volatile betting? I felt on the international.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe Cochise 20-1. Not that I was interested in backing him or anything like that, but he was 20 or 25-1. Um, Brookside Ritchie was back. Bobsleigh Dream was back late. Raham Mofo was back late. It was just a kind of a market that was coming and going for a couple of days beforehand, up and down. It was an interesting market. A lot of
Um,
people wanted to take on Balnabola, thinking that the shortest run to the bend would might affect him and whatever. And had he broke reasonably well, he probably would have won. But like you're looking for an angle, and the people who found that angle got paid out.
Yeah, they certainly did. Looking at the remainder of the card at Dundalk, there was sort of one standout display in the 400 that came from Road Exile, posting 2091 off 697 sectional. Was it his first sprint run? He was bought out of your part of the world, Tommy. Obviously now trained by Pat Buckley. Yeah, he won his debut at Youghal in 29-22. He had one sprint in Limerick. He won in 1912 back November of last year. Obviously ran well in the early rounds of the Kirby. Has had 2 or 3 sort of trips. It was in Waterford, a couple of times in Shelbourne, then that run in Dundalk. And then that brings us nicely along to the action from Dundalk on Saturday evening, because the Barwon Racing Irish Sprint Cup started, and the aforementioned Road Exile set the standard once again. This time 2094, not quite the same start as he did on Wednesday, but 2094, Tommy, anytime you're breaking 21 seconds around Dundalk, you have to be respected. He's clearly a very fast greyhound.
Yeah, he is, and he started. He's a little brother to Pap de Oro, who Pat Buckley bought at the same time. But they came from Andy Lynch. The Andy thought a fair amount of both of them. They had similar profiles. The one in Youghal in good times, and were quickly moved on. But I think Pat, from what I hear, Pat Buckley seems to have high regard for both of them. So it's nice to see Road Exile doing it now, because actually we'll be talking about Pap de Oro in a few minutes. So good weekend for them.
It certainly was. Listen, we can't go through the opening round of the Barrow Racing Irish Sprint Cup. There's just simply too much to get through. We will be talking about it plenty over the next few weeks. Obviously, there'll be a derby to talk about too, but we'll certainly throw our eye upon the sprint action. I'll just run through the heat winners. Carrick Aldo. I was taken by this dog, son of Droopy Sydney, flashed out, was sort of clipped around the opening bend, lost his place, and then stormed home again for David Murray and Thomas Glynn. They have a good record down at Dundalk. What was their good sprinter, Tommy? He ran in a Laurel's final.
Oh Lord, he's a B. What was it?
Brody's Magic.
Wrong. Oh, Jesus.
I asked you because I couldn't remember, and then boom, it clicked.
Yeah.
We were
Well, it
both
was B. It was B. I have
we
this
were
weird mind. I think I can think of the letter it might be, but I can never think of the name. But actually, he was
both,
one of my favorites at the time. Brody's Magic. So
both a huge fan
yeah.
of him. He's a fast dog. It wasn't a grader who was picking up. Galloping Sydney went to the front, and he picked up
Yeah.
Galloping Sydney in the long run home. That's a hell of a run. Burgess Supreme, obviously Produce Stakes winner, was back in third. He'll improve for it. This was his first step into sprinting company. He too was won by Get It Right. This is the very, very exciting youngster for Ollie Bray, and now owned by Amanda Nick Giel, 2104. He has made some stunning start to his career. A son of New Win Taylor. We're talking about these young sires. New Win Taylor is another that's starting to make a few waves. This fellow took control into the corner, 702 sectional, the same time he did in his last race victory, 2092 on that occasion, 2104 on this latest success. He's now from three in his career, all three of them coming over the 400-yard trip around Dundalk. I get the impression that Ollie doesn't feel he's going to be a stout there, so I think sprinting will be his game going forward. But I'm sure Nick and Amanda Gill knew that when they were buying him. They would have been talking to Ollie, and he's a very exciting sprinter for them. Yahoo Sydney was one of two winners for Peter Cronin. He won in 21-25, leading early, looks a nice type. Pavilion Fire, very impressive to me, a son of Good News. He flew to the opening corner. He was just different gravy to them. Like Corbrack Prince came through for second spot, but Pavilion Fire 702 to the opening corner. Son of Good News. The Good News dog's normally strong. Well, this Pavilion Fire is very speedy. At the same time, was won by Who Have I in Heat 5. He's for Shane O'Gorman, John Brown on him, trained by Michael O'Donovan. I think this Michael O'Donovan fella has a bit of a future as a trainer. No question about it. Who Have I winning in 21-10, as I said. Blackstone Bobby completing a quick double for Michael O'Donovan, 21-36. He'll need to improve on that. And Road Exile, we've mentioned. Angry Grandad, I thought ran very well after a missed start. Was only fourth or fifth into the opening corner. Just took it up into the opening bend, showing sort of great acceleration that last 40 yards into the bend, and then charging clear to win in 21-34. Don't be surprised if he goes closer to 21 seconds next time out. Really taking display. Ballymac Winks winning for a certain Liam Dowling. Not a bad weekend for him. We'll get more. We'll get back to him in the near future. 21-29. Stefan's Joker, a very impressive winner. Clock probably going back a little bit towards the end of the night, 21-31, but to the eye it was more pleasing than that for Shay Campbell. Always has a very nice sprinter or two around him. And then the final heat won by the sponsors anti-post favours, Rathdown Molly. Somewhat surprising to me. Giving Chum Skippy a big life in that race. He was beating a short head, but showed all sorts of pace. He's a bit clueless at present. He's trained by Peter Cronin. He's a May 21, so he has enough experience, but the penny is yet to fully drop with him. But have no fear, Tommy. This fellow can run. I've seen him recently in Shelbourne Park and yet to win a race, but it's only a matter of time. Whether it'll come in the Irish Sprint Cup, I don't know. But it's a great competition. We'll get into that with a bit more depth next week. But best of luck to everyone still with a runner in the Sprint Classic. Now, Tommy, you mentioned at Papa de Oro, the Sprint Classic, the Tipperary Cup. It's great to see the Tipperary Cup has had a couple of years there where it was run sort of as a graded competition. It's now back. It's now back as an AAO competition, and a good winner, Papa de Oro, on Saturday night, as you mentioned, a brother to Road Exile. Pat Buckley has always thought a lot of this dog. He was facing a tricky draw out in Trap 6, but early speed wins the races, Tommy, and that was certainly the case with Papa de Oro.
That's what he needed. He absolutely needed to fly from the boxes to clear them, and he cleared them by about a length. And after that, I think he was about 4 clear early in the back straight. It was kind of a perfect performance because he didn't go in on top of anything, if you know what I mean. He did edge in ever so slightly going to the bend, but he just had that extra gear. It was a big performance, to be honest about it. But he is, as we said, he's a dog that Pat always thought quite a bit of, and I suppose, well, I think he's a certainty to go to Dublin now.
Yeah, I think he will go to Dublin. Whether the 550 yards will suit
Yeah,
him, we
yeah,
don't know. I'll tell you what, the longer run to the corner will certainly suit him.
yeah.
And we've seen that type of dog before. Certainly in recent years, it's far more of a sprint test than it ever was. But there's no question about it. Son of Droopy Sydney, a stud dog with a bright future. Good early speed. Took it, took charge down the back straight and ran to the line. Congratulations to all involved in Papa Diora, good winner of the Tipperary Cup. Now, to Curraheen Park, Tommy, on Saturday night.
Yeah.
We saw, we were expecting to see Up the Style continue her, massive run through the competition. She'd looked such a superstar in the previous two rounds, but on this occasion, stumbling at boxes, finding a bit of traffic, and just never really happened for her. She was she charged into the third bend so that the pace was still there, but just didn't really. It was a flat run from her after a stumbled start, so you can certainly make excuses. But on the inside of the track, Breeders' Wood went up well, so too did Scooby Duchess. But between the pair was Ballymac Run. She forced her way to the front on the opening corner. She's very strong. She's JT Pearl is her dam. Of course, she's a half sister to the likes of Hello Hammond, so there's loads of stamina in her pedigree. And once she went to the front, there was no catching her. And another big race success for Liam Dowling. Not a bad weekend for the man from Ballymcgilligan.
You know what? I'm kind of half disgusted myself that I didn't take a chance on her. I just thought the Breeders' Wood would prevent Ballymac Run from winning the race because Breeders' Wood flew out, did everything right the previous week with their early pace, and I thought it was probably going to be the same case on Saturday night. And the Ballymac Run, I felt, had run as well as she'd ever run in the semi-final. She ran a huge race in defeat, and I thought, if you swap the boxes, I would have fancied her strongly. Up the Style just hasn't perfected the art of trapping, but that was nothing to do with that the other night. Because we know how good she is, how much early pace she has. Um, I was kind of thinking, looking at the final pre-race, that she'd have to do everything right because there was so much early pace in the race. As it happens, I think if she had broke to her normal ability, she would have had the pace to lead, just the way that the race actually panned out. But it was weird and very unfortunate, and not the way we want to see in any final. Like, two bitches lost their chance at traps. Three of them probably strike it. Alice missed it completely. But Go Cash Ice and Up the Style both stumbled at traps, which is bizarre, and it's independent and it's nothing to do with one stumbling and causing the other to stumble. It was just a kind of really unfortunate it kind of like it effectively made it a three dog race after about two strides. So, but I'd take nothing away from Ballymac Run. I mean, the preview is there. If people were watching semi final, it was just that I had a concern about Breeders' Wood being such a professional trapper that she might get in the way. But Ballymac Run had the pace to just get the bend, and thereafter she was impressive.
Yeah, she certainly was. I look forward to seeing one or two of these bitches back up in Dublin in the near future. Up the Style being the one in particular you want to see in Shelbourne Park. Would you step her up and trip, give her a crack at the Derby?
I think so because longer run to the bend and the fact that she can show phenomenal early pace. I think now, even watching in Curraheen, I think her pace at her bend is what's most impressive. And you'd hope if she could do it right at traps that she would be a nice way clear in certainly in early round heats.
Yeah.
So I would definitely I would say yes, definitely.
As we speak, we are a matter of just days away from the Derby draw. The Boyle Sports Irish Greyhound Derby is starting earlier this year. Here we are, the 17th of July, and we're within 10 days of the start of the Derby. It will start on Friday the 28th, 11 days, Friday the 28th of July, Tommy. Let's take a quick glance at it. I've opened up the sponsors betting. We'll talk about if you're the first sort of few in the market there. Coulivanny Hoffa is now an 8-1 chance to win the Derby. Now, Coulivanny Hoffa has not been seen in action this year. In fact, he hasn't been seen in action since that fateful night when he inexplicably checked and broke my heart on the inside of Born Warrior at the third bend at Shelbourne Park. I'm on record as saying I think he's the fastest dog in training. I think he could potentially be the fastest dog in training over the last 3 or 4 years. But we were guessing whether he was even in training this year. Now, he has trialed a couple of times in recent times, and the money keeps coming for him. The last time I checked, he was 10-1 with Boyle Sports, and they were going shortest. So the fact that they've cut him to 8-1 would suggest the money continues to come. Give me your thoughts.
A strange one, a difficult one. Would you ask me? Do I like the campaign? No. Will I back him? No. Would I be afraid of him? Oh, very much so. I mean, you'd have to respect connections. I mean, they know what they're doing, and they've obviously felt that what he was doing was lucrative enough, and actually they could also blend in and have the campaign that they think is good enough to prep him for a derby. So, I mean, I shouldn't really be worried. I don't like it, but I shouldn't be. I shouldn't knowing connections of the Greyhound. I shouldn't be worried at all. I should be thinking that yes, he's a derby player. I just can't back him. I mean, I think it's a really deep derby this year,
Yeah,
and I
I tend
find
to
it
agree with
funny
you.
that I find it funny that towards the top of the market. I'm just looking here on Odds Checker, and I'm looking at the top one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, just top eight or nine, and there isn't a Liam Dowling dog in it. I suspect he'll have a part to play in this derby.
Yeah, well, with the sponsors, they certainly have one in the top six. Ballymacmarino's in there at 14-1.
Not, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm looking at Odds Checker, yeah.
Let's talk about them here. Swords Rex is 10-1. We obviously know how good he is. He's been given a rest after the English Derby, which will need it. But Graham has often gone on record saying this is a greyhound that thrives with greyhound race or thrives with racing. It'd be no surprise to see him back to his best in the Irish Derby.
I don't fancy him whatsoever. Can't have him on my mind, and the reason being, and it's he's a terrific dog, and Graham is Graham is right in what he's saying because we've seen that when he was missing, when he was missing for a time during his career, he was taking a couple of runs maybe to come back and show his best, but he was exceptionally good then again. I just find it hard to imagine, like he did everything right through a tough campaign in English Derby until the final, and then it just went pear shaped. Now it's Toaster, and I'm not inclined to blame the dog for that. That can just happen, unfortunately. But I just can't see him being able to do that again in an Irish Derby in a much, 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 much deeper competition. I
which
just
which
can't.
which which is coming so much sooner than normally. You know what I mean?
Yes,
We're only talking a matter of 4 or 5 weeks before, so he has to get back up to full speed.
I like look at. Of course, he's good enough. That's that. I have no doubt about that. Is he? I felt he was head and shoulders above the Greyhounds in English Derby in many ways. Do I feel he's head and shoulders above them in the Irish Derby? No, he wasn't head and shoulders above the likes of Clonard Duke. Obviously, Gaetan Nemo was very good in the final. Um, but I felt he was so professional right throughout the Derby until that final English Derby. It was kind of a shame in one way that he didn't win it. Although it is greyhound racing, it's not supposed to be that predictable. It's not supposed to be boring and predictable every week. I just wonder. He did so much. For me, I just can't have him on my mind. I just can't. I just couldn't entertain backing him.
I dare say you're probably not thinking the same way about all the dogs that challenge for the English Derby.
No,
Gate Time Nemo was so lightly raced. Obviously, he had the one run, in January prior to his English Derby campaign that he's on an upward trend. Would you be expecting him to run well through the Irish Derby? Obviously, it's a much, much deeper competition, as you've said, but he's definitely going the right way.
gone the right way, but he hasn't lit me up in the way that I'd like to be about wanting to have a bet about a dog. Um, it was a terrific, flawless performance in the final of the English Derby. And yes, he can improve. I just think there's so much in there at the moment. Um, and even like Clonard Duke, who was, you know, think I didn't like him going to Toaster. I didn't like Toaster for him. He's a dog that he's kind of a quirky dog. There's tons and tons of
That's
ability
that's where
there.
you and me differ. I told Kevin O'Brien he'd be mad not to go the night of the awards, and
Yeah,
and
and he
coming
said,
into the
and
final,
actually,
I was shoulders back, head held high. Obviously, didn't happen for him in the final, but it's a great achievement for a dog. That was so sort of still relatively young to get to an English Derby final. He's a very fast greyhound. He's definitely a dog that could challenge for Irish Derby honours, but again, you have to worry about the fact that he was in England.
yeah, I'm not as worried for him. He's a younger dog. He's a younger dog with less racing in him, and I think um, he's a dog who he's a clever dog who watches what he's doing in his races. I just felt, and actually it's funny, Kevin O'Brien, who I had never met before, came up to me the night of the awards and said, uh, uh, what you said on the podcast, and I was like, oh Jesus, what did I say? And he said, you said the Clonard, you didn't like Clonard, the idea of him going to Tulsa, and he goes, I agree with you. I was like, thank you to God.
Thankfully, he
But
talked to me afterwards.
yeah, he told you it was the right move, didn't he?
No, he wasn't mad for it. No, I said you'd be mad not to bring him. Dog's in the crest of wave. He's absolutely flying. Take your
Look at
chance.
Yeah, look at in many ways. I mean, if Graham Holland's a dog that good, with that ability in his kennel, he's going to do everything he can to tell the owner, come on now, you want to spend a few quid and get him over here because this is, we've got a chance of winning English Derby. He got to a final. It was justified. Look, it was justified. I just felt that like the likes of what happened in the final could happen to him at any night, any round. I think he's a danger in an Irish Derby. I think I'm more. I'd be more inclined to back him than Sword Rex, certainly by quite a considerable margin, actually.
Okay, let's glance to some of the remainder. Ballinbowl Ed, we don't need to say anything. We know how good he is. It's just a case of whether the consistency remains through the competition. But there's not going to be if there's one or two faster dogs in the Derby, I'd be surprised. We know exactly how good he is.
You know what I'd be doing, and I don't train greyhounds. Look, fortunately enough for the greyhounds, I don't train them. What I'd be doing with him anyway, after about round three, I'd be putting him over hurdle to some other track, or giving him a hand slip somewhere, or doing something a different track just to keep
Just
it,
just keep him guessing. Just keep him
just
guessing.
to keep him guessing
Yeah,
because
yeah.
his ability is immense. I know it's a risk, obviously, to add to the dog that like winning 6 rounds in Irish Derby takes an immense amount of luck and ability and constitution of a greyhound. And if you add in something else, you're probably it's not really going to help. But for a dog of his ability, I'd just be trying to keep him interested. If I took him away on the Tuesday between the third and fourth rounds and say, "Come on, we'll go to Dundalk or we'll go to somewhere with him, Clonmel or somewhere," and just say, "Go on, have a little spin around there and just keep you interested," because he's that type of dog that if you can keep him interested, God, I don't know what dogs can beat him like.
Yeah, we've mentioned Clonard Duke, Clonbrine Treaty. I think we both, we can see him going far, but he's going to have to sharpen up at boxes. Currently at
He
12 to
just
1. I do have to point out, like, this is sort of just a reactive to every run, Boyle Sports. They sort of cut dogs for each run. There will be a shake-up in this market. A lot of these dogs will be bigger in a few days' time. It's a case of when they start to get the entries rolling in, they sit down, they reassess. And last year there was, I think, probably 10 of the top 12 in the market were pushed out slightly. So it
well,
is worth keeping in mind.
to my mind, anti-post betting is very defensive. They bet them very defensively.
Yeah.
In anti-post markets, fear to get caught on one or somebody knows
They
something about
they
something
they
not
react
going
to
there.
they react to good runs. They never react to the bad runs.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if Clonbrine Treaty popped out in the first round, did a fast time, and continues to do it right throughout the competition, goes unbeaten through the Derby and wins it, and you kind of and never goes above 12 to 1, obviously. But at the moment, I'm not inclined to take 12 to 1, and it's funny, I might only need 16s to say, geez, I have to have something on him.
Yeah,
20s, certainly
16
20s. I
is
have the 16s is
16
my
is where
marker.
I think he's sort of around. That's I think is his level at this moment in time.
That's my marker where I think I have to back him at 16s, whereas at 12s I can probably leave him alone.
Ballymac Marino. Here's a question for you: will Ballymac Marino be Liam Dowling's leading charge for the Derby?
I'm not sure. I'm stunned. I'm stunned that he doesn't have a few more of them up there towards the top of the betting. I see he's like, I don't know how Carroll's are going 40 to 1. That could be a mistake. 40 to 1 Ballymacreno for the Derby and 16s elsewhere. Um, I'm not sure. He's a dog I really like. I've liked him since his runs in Tralee. I just think there's potential for him to miss a kick and get a lot of trouble, get himself into a lot of traffic. I'm not yet convinced that every time I see him running that he's going to pop out and do things 100% right. He's still quite inexperienced. Yes, he's been picking up a little bit in the last few weeks or the last couple of months, picking up a little bit. He's still quite inexperienced, and I'm not sure. He's exactly where I'd want him to be.
He is one of those prime example of a dog that would probably get more out of two easy assignments in the early rounds than any other dog in the Derby, because you give him a crack at Shelbourne Park, that 550-yard trip should be made for him. And just give him one or two sort of relatively easy assignments early, and he could fly. He could take off. And we could be looking at that 16 to 1 in a few months time, or in a month's time going, I wish I'd taken some of that 16s. But I see where you're coming from. I would like to see him have two or three runs around Shelbourne before sort of getting into that sort of mindset. Let's skip down. It's notable that Deladdy Da isn't in the betting here. Personally, I would back him ahead of Ballymac Marino from the kennel. That's
What price
that's
would you back him at?
Deladdy Da.
Yeah.
Backed him last night at 25.
Where'd you get that?
The Green Machine.
Okay.
Rye Hope Beach is 20 to 1. A dog who has all the pace and the ability in the world, but at the moment, if he wasn't trained by Michael O'Donovan, and there is liabilities there, I know with Boyle Sports that they've laid him. He's looking every inch of 40-1 chance at the present, with a view that he could improve through the competition, but he's going to have to sharpen up early, no question about it. Roaming Turbo is one that I think was backed earlier in the year. We haven't seen much of him. He showed real promise in his early sort of couple of starts, but we haven't seen him since, so maybe there's been an issue there. Gate Time Nemo, 20-1. Callaway Pro-Am, 20-1. This is a dog who beaten Derby favourite last year. Just hasn't quite happened for him. He was withdrawn the other night. Owen had said he was still not happy with the dog. He had a bit of an issue, and that's a concern.
There were flashes in. There were flashes in the last couple of months of what got him to a Derby final. But he's in the bracket of, I'm not sure what he's going to do week to week at the moment.
Yeah, Droopy's got
From
it.
post to pillar, is he going to come over?
I wouldn't say so. I'd say he's a million. I would say he's a million. I don't think owners are pushing it. Certainly the trainer won't.
25, 28-1.
Trainer certainly won't be bringing him over, and owners aren't pushing it. Don't be surprised though if they came over for Derby final night. I just wouldn't be surprised if they decided a 575 or 600 could be in the wheelhouse, and maybe towards the end of the year for the Winter Racing Festival. Droopy's got his quoted at 20-1. I wouldn't be backing that now until I saw him in the first round draw, and even then I think I'd probably want double it. Romeo Command will not run the Derby, as far as I'm concerned. Carrick Fergie's an interesting runner, looks so fast down in Kilkenny. Has he run since Kilkenny? I'm not sure, I'd have to check that, but that's plenty short enough about a dog who probably does lack just a half yard to the corner, not a full yard. That could still come. Sober Glory is a very fast greyhound. Similar sort of style to Optic Chico, 25-1. Optic Chico is a dog that they've laid for big money. He's a dog that could go deep into a Derby, but I think there'll be one or two far too sharp.
The pace the last day in defeat was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's massively fast.
Yeah, massively fast. Like the type of dog you might be backing to qualify through. Trinity Juniorine, where are we to stand with the Champions Stakes winner?
Listen, he did 29-30 out in the Derby or in the Champions Stakes. The dogs don't tend to do those runs until the Derby. That bodes well for him.
Yeah,
it's all a case of whether he continues to trap. He needs to trap. I think they'll see them inside now after having won the Champions Stakes from the inside. He's a dog I would have toyed with the middle in the past, but I think he's an inside runner. You'd have to consider him. One that is worth a mention is Ballymac Walt. Walt, I showed good early speed in this Champion Plate semi-finals and final. Just a dog that the penny seems to have dropped with him, Tommy. And we saw the likes of Pastana, that sort of breed, like the Dowlings breed. He improved considerably for his Champion Stakes runs. Ballymac Walt could still improve another 4 or 5 lengths, and all of a sudden that brings him down to the 29-20 bracket. Genuinely, it'd be no surprise to me if he went very, very far in the Derby.
Yeah, no surprise to me either. Another dog that I see is at a big price. Where do we stand with Scaglietti?
Very pacey greyhound, tends to get lost for that 1 yard into the opening corner. Yeah. That's his issue. The last 50 yards into the bend, touch of the Vincenzo's about him. Vincenzo probably had a touch more early. He's a good starter. That's the one thing he certainly has in his favour, Scaglietti, but just cannot quite get that last 50 yards into the corner. He'll no doubt win a round or two and find style in the early stages. It's when it gets really competitive that's where you have your concerns. Then we're talking about the likes of the young dogs there, Romeo Hanzo, Boyle Sports, Bob Jatara, any of those dogs. The Dale Road dog around the other night, just keep an eye on him. Some of these dogs haven't been introduced to betting yet. Anything else that we missed there, Tommy? Like I see Boyle Sport or Bobsleigh Dream is in there at 33-1. You can do worse than back a Bobsleigh Dream.
Well, Bobsleigh Dream was going to turn very close in the international on Wednesday night. And I think funny enough, the Shelley Fennelly winner, Ballymac Run, she ran very well in a couple of rounds of the Derby last year. I think she just looked to me in the last 2 weeks that she was coming back to her very best. Now she's not going to win a Derby, but she's just a type I could see advancing maybe semi-final. Find a way into the semi-final of the Derby. Sometimes if something strikes you that there just seem to be, this one's coming back to. But I thought the semi-final run, even though obviously the Derby run behind Coolvanny Hoffman last year was big, I just felt that watching her in the semi-final of the Shelley Fennelly, that she's very close to her best, if not better than ever.
Yeah, it's a strange time. If you are having an anti-post selection in the Derby, I'd leave it. I'd leave it for the week now at this point. I think there will be plenty of those pushed out as dogs come in, dogs come out. Yeah, the trends would say, Tommy, back a dog in its sort of first full season that's still relatively lightly raced, has plenty of early speed, and has the scope for improvement. That's what the recent record books have been telling us.
Yeah, but I'm a bit like you, Ian. I'm gonna wait. You might as well wait till when is the draw on? Is it Monday or Tuesday or no,
It'll be Monday morning, I assume. That's the July 24th.
24th this day week?
Next Monday, yeah, next Monday.
Yeah. I'd wait till that draw. As you said, they'll definitely shake it up a bit, and they'll definitely push out some of them. I'd be ready to pounce now on a couple of them if I got the prices I kind of wanted. So, but I think it's a terrific derby. I mean, I probably won't back Ballinabola Ed, but I know he can beat me every single round.
It's a derby that'll give us plenty to talk about. No question about that.
Oh yeah.
As you said there, when it came to the English Derby, and I'm not trying to denigrate the English Derby, but after five or six at the top of the market, it was a struggle. Now, Gaytime Nemo was well outside of those 5 or 6 at the top of the market. You could go down to top 26 in the market in the Irish Derby and conceivably see, dogs that can go all the way to the very end. And then there's 3 or 4 dogs there that's going to take off. Springers, as they say, young dogs with just open to so much more improvement. Dogs that have been lightly raced this year for whatever reasons. Law Hill Blake obviously had a good profile, but was nothing like the dog we saw through the Derby in the early part of his career. Dogs like that can take off. So keep an eye out for the improver. A progressive improving dog is what I would suggest you look for when you're trying to pick a Derby selection. Lots to look forward to. That's it all starts in vain next Monday morning with the Derby draw, but it won't be till Friday week when we really get stuck into the Derby action. Lots to look forward to in the coming weeks, and should be another vintage renewal. If you can get to Shelbourne Park at any point over the next month and a half, it is well worth your while. Tommy, looking forward to it?
Oh, big time, big time. Just as I said to you, numerous times over the last few months, the standard in the country at the moment is ridiculously good, and it wouldn't be a surprise if something like you said came from a little bit left field, has shown that bit of promise, but hasn't shown the Derby stuff just yet. Um, and a dog that we might talk about for a long time, because you're going to have to be exceptionally good to win this Derby. It really is that deep. I'm really looking forward to it. Born Warrior, I suppose, last year's winner. He was a brilliant winner last year. He's just struggling a bit at the moment, which is a shame, because it's a shame, because if you have a dog like that, you want to give him every chance to show how good he is. But like, what a greyhound to have owned and to have trained. Like, he's just been brilliant. So he got beaten last night in Kenny. He missed the kick and showed pace up, but was just on the back foot the whole way. I suppose the Derby's now coming too soon for him to be 100% right, but I think the memories of last year are worth holding on to for connections. He was just class last year. I think we'll have something similar this year.
I agree with you. Obviously, we didn't mention Kilkenny last night. Big crowd for the John Mitchell and KGOBA festival down at Kilkenny. A track that's doing all the right things, a thriving market down there, good racing, and they're really giving it a go. And thoroughly deserved success last night with big crowds. Seven Beach did a massive 28:51 last night. Kilkenny, I think, it's the 3rd fastest time ever posted around the St. James's Road venue, or St. James Road venue. It's massive run, trained by Jennifer O'Donnell, of course, and he's a young dog to keep an eye on in the future. A couple of little tidbits before we go. Gord Kelly Nestor, Tommy's been retired. It was sent to me. It was sent to me over the weekend. A picture. James Murray put up a post on Instagram that their star has been retired. Twice a Derby semi-finalist, twice 4th in the Derby semi-final. That must be a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. Smashing dog for them, and well handled, you have to say.
Yeah,
it's a fair achievement. It's a fair achievement. I know it's frustrating for them, but it's a fair achievement all the same to get a dog to that stage twice.
Yeah, he won it. He did win. He did win a Kilkenny, one of the A1 Derby, in the early enough stages of his career to collect a €10,000 prize. So he has had his plenty of moments in the sun, but we'll greatly miss him. One race shy of his 80th start. Happy retirement, big fella. And just Tommy, I caught an eye on another little story over the weekend. Billy's Diva had a litter at 10. I know you were a fan.
Oh,
Fast lady.
she was a brilliant bitch. 525, 550. She was class. She was she, what are they two? What are they? You know,
Oh, I saw it
what
and I can't remember. Could be
I
Ballyhimmock. Could it be Ballyhimmock and Jet? Oh, listen,
I'd be looking forward to seeing them.
I could be talking
She
out
was class.
my backside
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
present.
But
No,
she was a class bitch. I look forward to seeing them.
yeah, no, absolutely. Best of luck to all involved with Billy's Diva. And of course, happy retirement, Gort Kelly Nestor. That's it on this Monday evening. We have waffled on for long enough. I tried to cut Tommy down a few times, but he just insists on talking and talking and talking and talking, says the man. Anyway, that's it for us on a Monday
Whatever he
night.
is.
Best of luck. Have a great week. And we look forward to the Irish Derby draw next week. It's going to be a hectic few weeks, but that's it from us on this Monday evening. Good evening. Good luck. God bless.